Hi there, welcome everybody. Hope you're doing very well indeed. Hit the like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. It's Michael Bott here.
Yes, and it's Rupert Soskin here.
Why are we talking about, as it is seen from the title, why are we talking about little Sayburç Man now?
Little Sayburç Man now. Well, Little Sayburç Man, when we were in Turkey, not all that long ago, we took a trip out to Sayburç. I mean, there's just, as you know, probably if you've seen any of the other stuff, that the amount of sites all around Sanliurfa, the amount of ancient sites going back so deep in time, and so many little nuggets around the place that are all quite different in their way, but just because such a tiny percentage of everywhere has been excavated. And here we are in Sayburç, where there's this amazing building, ancient special building that was found, and it's underneath the houses that were built during the 20th century. I don't know exactly how old
1949.
Was it 1949? Okay.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that here is yet another ancient site with extraordinary carvings and sculptures in it, but underneath the houses. It just, everywhere you go, it makes you wonder how much else is below the ground. So, yes, we took a trip out there to have a closer look at the little fella and the carvings around it.
Of course, he first came to light, it was only last year, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Early in 23. And, of course, the main feature was picked up by everybody. I mean, the mainstream media, the media, and us, of course. Hard not to. It was the fact that Sayburç Man is holding on to his bits. There were various headlines at the time, and we did a piece ourselves. I won't go over those headlines again. I did so in the original piece that we did, which I'll plonk a link up in the corner there for that. But little did we know at the time that we were recording that special about Sayburç Man, that we'd be staring, at him face to face before the year end.
Yes.
At that point, we did not know, did we?
No, it seemed a million miles away. It wasn't something that we, at the time, it wasn't something that we thought necessarily we'd get to do anyway, was it? So, yes, bit of a surprise overall, really. God, what a year it was last year.
Indeed it was. Sparked off, as far as Sayburç Man is concerned, sparked off by a paper by Aylan Özdoğan, Dr. Aylan Özdoğan, whose very short paper, just put the carvings in the Sayburç Special Building in context, and put forward the idea that the carvings along this bench were the first known example of a narrative, of a representation, I should say, of a narrative, because the scene represents something happening. And if you recognise that something happening, then anybody present at the time, 10,000 whatever years ago, would have recognised the story. That was the theme, and that was the main thing that was supposed to come out of the piece, though everybody remembers the bit about him holding onto his bits. So, we were lucky to be in Turkey and to be with Lee Clare, who was able to take us along and show us where the site was. What do you remember about that day, Rupert? We were at Göbekli Tepe already.
We were, yes. What do I remember about that day? I remember we had a very good lunch. I do remember that. But when we hit the road, it was a fair drive, wasn't it? Do you remember how long the drive was?
Well, it probably seemed a long time, but it's not that far out of Sanliurfa. It's close enough to Sanliurfa that the area it's in seems to be becoming industrialised in order to serve Sanliurfa.
That's very true, actually. In fact, it's quite extraordinary that everything is so arid. It looks like you're driving through desert, and then suddenly you come across this massive, what looks like an industrial park. It's It's quite incongruous, really. But
Yeah.
the thing was, when we actually got there, and we just parked, we were a bit of a walk away from where the house actually is.
Despite Lee's best directions.
But what was interesting, where we parked just between buildings, and we were really close to some ruined buildings, again 20th century buildings, but completely ruined, that still had turf roofs. And it was as if you were in a time machine, because you had this style of building that was, broadly unchanged from what would have been there thousands of years ago. So it was quite interesting to see things, building styles not fundamentally changed in that.
And I remember actually driving through the landscape. Driving in a few days' time, we drove to Konya so we could go to Çatalhöyük. And I remember on that journey seeing along the road buildings with turf roofs still, that weren't too far removed at all from some of the buildings that, the reproduction buildings that we saw elsewhere. I've forgotten the name of the site at the moment. Göbekli. That's the name of the site I'm thinking of, where the recreation buildings, that and those sort of relatively modern buildings that didn't seem too out of place.
Yes.
Anyway, we digress slightly.
Yes. So there's another really interesting aspect there. We were actually, as we were walking across to the house, we passed. It was a shame actually that we were there out of season, because there is excavation work going on away from the special building that we were heading for, but they're excavating the settlement area of this place as well, and that was all covered up with protective sheeting for the winter. So I don't know what's underneath that. It'll be interesting to if we could go back at a time of year when it was open and see how that excavation is going on. But one of the big surprises was when we were getting just close to the building where the carvings are, that there's actually a Roman limestone quarry in front of it. And the interesting thing there is that that the limestone quarry is, 2,000-ish years old. So it's many thousands of years younger than the special building, which is just close by. And you have to wonder, well, what did the special building look like 2,000 years ago when the Romans were quarrying there? Because clearly, with the modern houses, so the 20th century houses built on top of the special building, you can see that the special building would not have been covered up. It wouldn't have. I certainly don't think it would have been covered over with soil when the Romans were quarrying there. So, what were the Romans experiencing of the 7,000 years older?
I suspect, that by Roman times it was already, a tell, because that's the important thing to get about this site. That in descriptions of Sayburç, the village, the 1949 village was built on a known tell, and if you've got a tell, Göbekli Tepe is a tell. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe is a tell. The giveaway is, these little hills in the landscape that tell of, forgive the slight pun, the development of a settlement over time as people built, just didn't, either burnt down or destroyed, raised to the ground the buildings that were there before, then built on the original foundations again and built on the original foundations again. So you get these extraordinary slices through time that in the landscape in these particular sorts of areas. So Sayburç is a tell. So the excavations at Sayburç so far have been relatively minor.
Yeah.
I suspect, as given what we know, and a little revelation that was given to us while we were actually at the site after we'd been inside to visit the little man, that there's a lot more to Sayburç under the ground than you may give it credit for.
And indeed underneath those buildings, because you do see, when you're inside, looking at the carvings, it's a sweeping, curved lower section of wall, and the curve of the bench, as we'd describe it, it's that sort of height that you could sit on it. And the sweep of the curve, it just disappears underneath the houses on the side. So heaven knows how big that building originally was, and what remains to be excavated underneath.
Well, exactly. I mean, for us, having come from Göbekli Tepe, it was not an unfamiliar sight, the curve of a bench around the edge of a special building. It was easy for us to imagine what else might have been in the room. As Rupert says, it's only a section of this special, considering what you've got exposed at Göbekli Tepe, is that waiting below the surface there? If the time and the money can be spent at Sayburç?
Well, the authorities have acquired the houses, haven't they? The intention is to excavate. Heaven knows when, even when that happens. But crikey, it'll be amazing if they do.
So anyway, we did imagine eventually the area with the Sayburç Man and the bench carvings are protected behind iron gates underneath the building. We're so lucky because it's not an easy site to visit unless you know where you're going, what you're looking for. No, probably helps to be able to speak Turkish as well.
Actually, and not just Turkish, because when we got there, and there was nobody around, and Liz, our Turkish fixer, she started talking to a woman who was there, who was saying that there was nobody else about, and she was Kurdish. She wasn't even speaking Turkish. Fortunately, Liz could deal with that, but otherwise we'd have been lost, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Anyway, somehow the gate was opened and we managed to get inside there. So, I mean, I was concentrating on carrying a camera. This is the dreadful split thing of trying to film things and be in the space at the same time. What were your first impressions of going in there? After all this time, after all this wait, and no small amount of anticipation, I guess.
Yes. The thing that really strikes me most and struck me most at the time is the fact that it's so small. So you're looking at a bench that, it's a high bench, so it's not the height of a seat that we conventionally use in an office. It's higher than that, but it's not as high as a table height, so you could comfortably sit on it in a sort of, when you lean back on something, it's that sort of height, thigh height. And so you've got this small frieze going round with this and it does look like a narrative of some description. So you're looking at this thing. And what struck me is that it's not like a big statue. It's not making a big statement. It's just, for want of a better expression, it's like wallpaper. It's a narrative that the people clearly were very accustomed to. It was
familiar with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because otherwise you'd have made a big deal out of it. You'd make a big frieze or whatever. The fact that it's something that you sit on, for me, spoke volumes, and it does make you wonder what else is in the rest of that building. We laugh in schoolboy manner about, there's a depiction of a man holding his bits. But the really interesting thing for me is that Man, so one of the first, in fact, if not the first, of the statues that was found before Göbekli Tepe was found. It goes back, the earliest thing that they found of a man holding his bits. And then since then, there's this one at Sayburç that we're talking about now.
It's worth mentioning that Man is quite a substantial, statue, isn't
he's,
it?
He's taller than life size, isn't he?
In fact,
he's 6 foot tall.
I think at last count, he is the earliest known human-sized statue, Man.
I think you're right.
Yeah. What's the name of the site within the city bounds of it's appearing on a screen near you?
Yes.
right now. It was on the
we went to visit
I was about to tell you what it was, and then it went. One of those moments.
It'll come to me. I should get my notepad out because I was scribbling all sorts of notes at the time. Oh, heavens above. Anyway, there. That's right in the middle of the town.
Actually,
right
if you like, I tell you what, there's actual pictures of you pointing at it from the hill above.
That's true. That's very true. There are.
Over the mosque and showing us where it is.
And
there you are.
Because you don't. Thank you very much. Because you don't.
It was found there.
Yes. Because you can't.
Who needs words? We got pictures.
Because you can't see anything really to speak of when you're down in the town. You'd walk straight past this and have no idea
building site
that was a T-pillar site. It's amazing. But so they found Man there, and then there's the statue that they uncovered at Karahan Tepe as well, which is also life size. No, it was in a box when we got to Karahan Tepe. We couldn't see it. But the point is, there's another man holding his bits. Now, the point there is that this is a story. Surely that this is it's like we have the stories of whether it's Adam and Eve or I'm not saying it's a creation thing. Even if it's Red Riding Hood, the thing is that we have stories that we recognise, and so if you saw a little girl in a cloak with a wolf hiding behind a tree, then you immediately know what that story is, and so a man holding his bits with a leopard on either side of him. Come on, it's a story. Surely it's a story.
Well, absolutely. But the wonderful thing is, is this shared motif, this shared story across this quite a large area, of Anatolia at least. And the motif repeats itself, not just in, freestanding statuary, as they've found at Karahan Tepe and Man, and our relief at Sayburç. But it is also echoed on the carvings of the T-pillars, because more than it looks like he's holding his bits, the Man, it looks like he's got that classic with the fingers just over each side of his groin, and that echoes the joining of the hands on the T-pillars at the belt that you can see on many of the T-pillars. That motif repeats and repeats and repeats, and will surprise you in a moment with where we found it actually repeats.
Yes.
But this, I think that for me, struggling with my camera and all the rest of it, at that time and leading up until visiting him, we being a little bit late to the game as far as Anatolian prehistory is concerned, we're still catching up as far as what is known and what is in the public domain and what is known archaeologically about these kinds of motifs and the kind of sculptures that we're doing there. So, that nice surprise of, this is repeating that and that's repeating that. My goodness, these people were talking to the people over there at Göbekli Tepe, and they were talking to people over there at Karahan Tepe, and, and goodness knows wherever. If I was clever, I'd be able to trip off a whole list of Tepe sites there. But
yes, I'll tell you another interesting point that's when you're talking about T-pillars and the common motif of the arms folded and and hands at the waist. That in building D at Göbekli Tepe, there one of the pillars, only one, has got a fox. So there's the bent arm, and there's a fox drawn in this section. And the interpretation of that is that he's holding the fox under his arm, and that's a reasonable interpretation. Other than okay, it could just be a random fox carved on the side of a man's body. But if you accept that interpretation, which personally I do, that it's supposed to represent the fox being held underneath this man's arm, man, woman, presume man, because everything else in there is all male depiction, except for one thing. But the point is, it's only one pillar. You have a look at the adjacent pillar, and there's no other adornment on the sides of the pillar. It's just the arms at the waist. So the implication for me was that, well, therefore this pillar is representing somebody or something specific. If the pillars aren't, if they're quite different, and only one has got a fox. And so at Karahan Tepe, for example, where you also see T-pillars with the hands at the waist, with no other carvings on the sides of the body. So that it does suggest that the fox motif is representing somebody in particular. That's how I'd interpret it anyway.
Indeed. Forgetting the other T-pillar in the centre of building D, there's a fox pelt at the waist.
Yes, well, that's a common thing, isn't it? The fox pelt hanging from the waist. So it's basically it's the head of the pelt, which you don't see, but the head of the pelt it's as if it's folded into the belt, and then the rest of the pelt hangs down, a bit like a sporran, really. Yeah.
Do you think foxes were having a tough time in the pre-pottery Neolithic?
Do you know, it's an interesting thing, because there was another article that was published very recently, and it was nothing to do with Turkey, but it was a burial that was excavated. I'm sorry, I don't remember where, but where they'd found the remains of fox in the burial, and because of the way it was placed in the burial, the interpretation was that this was somebody's pet.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, it's there's all sorts of things that you can apply to that. Number one, just because, even today, we eat a lot of the things that we think are very cute. Children will play with lambs, and then you'll all have them with mint sauce a few days later. So the fact that they were using their skins for clothing, to me, doesn't necessarily mean that they might not have been pets as well. Yes. I think any animal that is going to potentially keep your vermin problem down is your rodent problem is probably something you'd welcome into your house.
I'm sorry I asked if foxes were having a tough time in the pre-pottery Neolithic, because we were in danger of going literally down
another
the foxhole.
Yeah. Down the foxhole.
Except now my mind goes to that little kennel-like structure in building B.
Well, there's a few of them, aren't there? There's buildings. There's one in building C. There's certainly one in building. There's one over in the side of building D. Actually, they're all over the place. They're all over the place.
Sorry, we're running off the tracks.
We are, except that seeing as you brought it up, it's also worth mentioning that a lot of people have commented to us that it reminds them of the air inlets that you get in some of the American kivas.
Right, okay.
Which maybe can't dismiss it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, I just thought of something. This gets us back on track. Actually, talking about narrative.
Yes.
I'm talking about, I think it's building B, isn't it? With the hunt, with the doggies chasing after the boar.
So obviously fox, big fox, but piggy, and potentially being chased by a doggy, and another one. So that could be a hunting scene.
But that's something happening. That's not just an animal, a representation of a single animal.
That's
It's
true.
It's a representation of an event.
Yes. The interesting thing there is that carving in particular is very crude in comparison with the others, and you have to wonder, when something is just scratched on the surface as opposed to actually carved and sculpted away, that it does make you wonder if it's later graffiti even. I say later, don't know. But
it depends on the speed with which it was, the site was covered up, with the collapse from the from above.
Yeah. No idea.
Anyway, like I say, we've gone down a little bit of a hole there. Let's go back to
Sayburç. Yes. Interesting that the carving alongside, so to the left of the little man holding his bits in between two leopards.
Yeah. Two leopards. That's another motif. Carry on. Sorry.
Yes, two leopards, or yes. I mean, there's debate about which kind of cat they might be, but it tends to be leopard, doesn't it? And just to bounce off down another rabbit hole, there's something else that adds credence to the leopard thing, and that's that at Karahan Tepe, there's a couple of the pillars that are carved out of the bedrock that, in contrast to Göbekli Tepe, where everybody seems to be wearing fox pelts from the waist, that at Karahan Tepe, the pelts on these particular pillars are pecked to look like leopard skins. So, so it's something that I haven't seen commented on anywhere else, and I must admit I didn't see it at the time. It was only when I was going through the stills, and I blew the stills up to full size and thought, wait a minute, and so it's now. You see, that gives me a really kind of that's exciting. That is it a thing? Is it a difference between the peoples? Or is it a status thing? Is it, why is it that these people are depicted wearing leopard skins and these people are depicted wearing fox skins? Again, it's a thing.
What is Karahan Tepe is about 40 kilometres from Göbekli Tepe?
Yeah, roughly.
So,
yeah, an
easy journey. Relatively.
It's not far for them. They've trotted that in no time. But to the left of man holding his bits between two leopards is a figure in the face of a bull or an aurochs, or we presume aurochs, but a wild bull of some description, and so many aspects to this. Number one is that the bull is depicted with its head on the side, so that you get the profile of the two horns. Now, you see that depiction of the bull all over the place, which means that it's clear it's an accepted way of depicting this creature. Now, either it's an accepted thing from a story, or it's just an accepted graphic of this is how traditionally we draw bulls. It's intriguing. But the other thing is, this figure, the figure in front of the bull, what's he doing? There's been a lot of debate about what he's doing. Some people say that it looks like he's dancing. And when you think about, the people jumping over bulls in Crete, or the way they still do in Spain, maybe he's dancing.
He's certainly in action.
Yes. It could be interpreted that he's jumping back in fear. It's certainly, He's doing something, but he's holding something in his hand. And again, a lot of debate about what that might be. It could be a rag, it could, just a cloth that he's shaking. Personally, I think it looks like a sling, but then, that's based on nothing except that it looks like a sling.
A lot of people have said it was a snake. It is a snake.
A lot of people do say it's a snake.
I think that's where the debate, the balance point of the debate is snake, sling.
But the thing is that it's clearly depicting something that everybody recognised. It's so deeply personal, isn't it? The fact that it's on a bench, the fact that it's not this grandiose thing. We've said this, that it's something that people took for granted.
It is. Going back to the point you made earlier, is that this is a modest representation of whatever the story is compared to the grandeur that we've encountered at Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe and others elsewhere as well. So, it's a massive privilege to be in that room looking at it. And I can't help thinking that the temptation is to overinterpret.
Yeah.
If the story was reasonably, ordinary, everyday to them, in ways that stories can be, is it possible that we fall into the trap of trying to put too much significance on it? I think we all get excited by the prospect of possibly solving a mystery, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, we're not going to solve this one, not in terms of being able to say what the story was.
Utterly impossible.
And so we're left
with... It's an arrogance, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're just left with our imaginations, and our imaginations tend to make things a bit more significant than they actually are. That said, that's not to diminish this room, this special building, and the site of Sayburç itself. Because, having been spoilt by being at Göbekli Tepe, let's not leap to conclusions about this place, because I seem to remember seeing around the top of that bench, there's slight indentations, radial indentations going around that bench, and I was thinking, is that where a T-pillar was resting? Something like that. We're in the centre of the room because we've got a whole... quite a diameter of a special building there, with Building D and others at Göbekli Tepe, where they're freestanding. I say freestanding, most likely to support a roof. T-pillars in the middle of the room. And, what other special buildings on this site were?
Well, there's another aspect, actually. Incredible. It's funny you saying that, because I had forgotten. But at the back of the room... there's so again on the top of the bench as it goes round, there's what looks like it could have been a basin of some sort. Now the only reason that's relevant is that we look at Karahan Tepe, and this is everything that's been excavated so far, not everything, but a lot of what has been excavated so far is clearly to do with water. Now you can't make that an overall characteristic of the site, because such tiny percentages of each of these sites have been excavated. So, maybe at Göbekli Tepe, when they dig, 100 yards over that way, maybe they'll find somewhere that's very water related there as well. There is a cistern at Göbekli Tepe, but the point I'm making is that here in the back of this room is another feature that looks like it could have been to do with water. We shouldn't take that for granted.
Well, those little basins on benches are, or by the side of seating, what look like seating areas, are quite ubiquitous at Göbekli Tepe. Nobody ever said, I didn't hear anybody mention this or remark about it, but something I saw reviewing the footage of the boar statue from Göbekli Tepe, in situ, there's a little dish in front of him in the stone.
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah,
it's true.
So it's a recurring thing. Yeah. I think the thing is, though, having the luxury of having been both at Göbekli Tepe and at Sayburç, and being able to make these comparisons, these little comparisons, that we shouldn't be lulled into the idea that Sayburç is any the lesser the site, because, like I said earlier, this is a tell site. Goodness knows what's under there. And I think the great thing was, when we left the room, when we left the little mound, went back outside, we got a little taste, a little hint, of what the possibilities really are at Sayburç. It may not be as grand, perhaps, as Göbekli Tepe, but, yeah.
But maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
It was a real surprise, because we had Benny Vass with us as well. Benny is a German archaeologist, and he's been doing all the 3D scanning of the sites. So he's been doing a huge amount of work at Göbekli Tepe. Anyway, he'd come along with us.
Isn't he doing a PhD on the portal stones?
He is doing a PhD on the portal stones. Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. But while we were inside, so Benny was mooching around outside because he'd been before, and he came over saying, "Look what I've found," and we went outside with him, and just in this dirty, I shouldn't really say that, but it's a very tired yard outside, and in the walls, so raised, it looks like raised flower beds, if you like, that, and even as an old gatepost, people have used T-pillars. They're broken T-pillars, and they've used them just for random rocks and stone supports.
Retaining walls for those levels there. Yeah.
And it's astonishing that you get up close to what look like just lumps of stone that have been used outside, and no, you can see that's the carvings, the arms coming down the sides, and
the classic,
and the hands at the waist. It's just classic T-pillar, and that just makes you realise that, well, if they've been digging these up and using them in walls, well, how many more are there underneath this tell site as well? It's like all the other sites. Just nothing has been excavated. Percentage-wise, it's the tiniest fraction.
But
we have no idea what's under there.
And it just speaks to how rich this whole landscape is. I mean, it was one thing to have our minds blown being at Göbekli Tepe, thinking we were knowing what we were getting ourselves into, and then just minds blown by the sheer size, and then minds blown 10 times more over, realising, well, this is repeated over and over and over again in the landscape around Şanlıurfa and beyond. Just astonishing. So who knows how much of this is going to be revealed in our lifetimes. I think it is beyond the capability and the finances of any government to get everything there is out of the ground. Yeah. So it's probably going to leave a lot of people frustrated about what we're going to find out. And what's around the next corner, whether we're going to have our dream, our ideas and hypotheses confirmed or damned, who knows?
Yes.
And how many times over in the coming decades? The archaeology is so rich, and I think that note of excitement. It's time to draw our visit to Sayburç to a close for the moment.
Yes.
So great, folks. Thank you for watching. And I tell you what, if you've made it this far, we know you're quite enthusiastic about this stuff. And if you are, you make a very good candidate to join our Patreon club thing. Links in the description below. We'd love to see you in the joining our Patreon community, and so with the rest of the community.
Yeah.
Love to see you too.
Yes,
There's loads
it's a busy
of
community.
stuff there.
Yeah.
We just finished our 121st special podcast for Patreon, Prehistory Guys Patreon page. So there's loads more there. I won't witter on about it. Like and subscribe. Do all that, please. You know that help. That's so much help as well. And of course, the grand project of Göbekli Tepe to Stonehenge, which has already been, our ability to visit Göbekli Tepe and the other sites, Sayburç included. We wouldn't have been able to do that had we not had support from people donating at Buy Me a Coffee. That project is ongoing. Loads more filming to be done throughout Europe and Britain. So if you, feel we deserve a little help, that would be a good thing to do. Have a look at our Buy Me a Coffee page, link down below. I'll put a link to the promo film up in the corner there. Once again, thanks for watching this far, and with that I will say it's a goodbye from me.
Yeah, and it's a goodbye from me. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks, folks.
Excellent.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Very good. Very good. No idea how that long was. But hey-ho. Did we do the little man justice, do you think?